Okay, so welcome everyone. We have a session on on mystical poetry of embodiment to look forward to here, and I have four poems. I hope I can fit them in, which will take us on an exploration of different ways that being embodied can have an impact. Still letting some people in, people arriving. Yes, and I know some of you are doing a retreat on embodiment. And just for those who maybe wonder what we mean exactly by embodiment, I think we will kind of address that as we go along. I think there are many ways to understand what embodiment means, but maybe if I put it very simply, it's being in the body and not only in the thinking. So being present in our alive, breathing body. Still admitting people from the waiting room here. A bit of multitasking. Um, yes, it's finding presence in the body and being able to be a whole human being, including body, mind, and heart, all at once, as much as we can. Okay. And before we move deeper into that, let's sit for a few minutes. That will give me a chance to focus more on just letting people in. More and more people coming in, which is wonderful. But let's sit and I'll guide us to settle during the sit, so that we can all feel that we're arriving here and becoming embodied. So if you want to, first of all, find a posture that feels comfortable enough for you as far as your body will allow today. And letting the body settle onto the surface that you're sitting or lying on. It's really drinking in the possibility here of pausing, of really welcoming ourselves into the stillness that's possible in this quiet moment. As we sit, maybe we can take in a little couplet from John O'Donoghue, who says, "Can we be with the quiet loyalty of the breath?" See if you can find the quiet loyalty of the breath. noticing that the mind tends to wander away. You get washed in different directions by currents of wanting and not wanting. Just guiding our attention back with a gentle, warm quality of our attitude, and returning to the breath, accompanying our breath. And maybe allowing the breath to expand a little bit. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're changing the rhythm of the breath, but just sensing that it might be possible for it to be more free within the body, to move more unobstructedly, with more fluidity. And maybe we could imagine that it's possible for our whole body to be breathed. Whole body breathing. So let's close that little practice for now and come back together here. So I thought I'd offer you a metaphor. I'm quite a fan of metaphors, and they speak to me quite easily. So this one really, really appeals to me as a way of introducing the embodied. And poetry uses metaphors a lot, as you know. So we'll be given some other metaphors as we go along. But the one I wanted to share here is that maybe we can imagine going into the body is a bit like if we go into a forest that we don't know, and we venture into the forest, and if we go into the forest and we really go in the forest, we would probably really want to have a map. But there might be a disadvantage in some ways to having a map. Obviously, on a practical level, we don't want to get lost, but perhaps we could imagine that we actually really want to explore the forest and come to know what's there. If we are too focused on the map, we don't actually experience the forest. If the map becomes the main thing our attention is engaged with, we don't notice the details of the path we're taking, and the turns, and our kind of sense of direction might not be as strongly in action. We might not be noticing the landmarks that might show us the way. Our fine-tuned attention may not pick up a lot of information from the space around us. We might also not notice the other beings around us and the beauty and not really take in actually being there in the forest. So I think sometimes um, when we when we make the intention to be in our body, it can be a bit like that. We're so used to thinking of our body as a kind of a map of the body, an image. There's the head. Inside the head is the brain. The lungs are here. The heart is there. This is what is in each place, and some parts I like, some parts I don't like, and um, each part's got a function. Some of them are doing a good job. Some of them are failing. We have all these ideas and an overall attitude probably to this map of our body that we have in our head. So what I'd like to invite you to do is to just put the map aside as if you never knew what the body was, what your body was, other than what you experience it to be in this moment. And I'll guide us to practice in that way. So it's like going into the forest, completely alive to what the experience of being there is, picking up information on every level that we can do through our senses, through our gut instinct, and just really being awake. I think we can imagine that as we journey into our body, it's like going into that forest. And really what I've just described, for those of you who are aware of this term, is kind of beginner's mind. It's called beginner's mind in mindfulness and in Buddhist circles, where we forget everything we already know and come into the radical presence of now to fully be with and alive to what's here. So before we sit for a while with our poems, I'd like to just mention how we can receive the poems. And I know many of you are here and have done mystical poetry courses with me already, so you'll be well aware, but maybe a reminder doesn't go amiss anyway. Some people, perhaps you haven't sat with poems in this way before. So the idea is, it's not like most of us when we were at school, we get given a poem and then we kind of looking at, the details of the alliteration and the pentameter and all these words that I can remember from school, and really try to get the meaning and kind of relate the meaning to philosophies and ideas, and we're not doing that. This way of receiving poetry will be a bit like being in that forest and then letting some rain fall down on us while we're there, or letting the sun shine through the branches and the leaves and bring us something. And so the poem sort of arrives into the practice and illuminates something, or touches us in some way. And this isn't about getting every part of the poem's meaning. It might just be that something in the poem speaks to you because it just does, not because you've striven to get it and understand it. So we're just present to the response that comes from inside us to the words of the poem and the imagery of the poem and the feel of the poem as well. There's a lovely quote, which I think really helps us to understand this way of being with poetry. And it's from David Richo. He says, "Let the poem come through the way music does." So when we listen to music, we just experience the whole experience of music, don't we? We can't kind of conceptually tease it all out. So imagine the poem is like music. You already get it and understand it. Just because it's painting pictures and it's speaking to your heart. Usually, I mean, and that's another point I want to make, that some poems won't speak to you, and that's okay. We're all different. So there's a variety of poems here. Some might evoke something for you and others might not. Yeah, so if we can just sort of um, venture into this and and with an openness and see what it all brings. And there's lots of variety in these poems, and yeah, I think it'll be a little bit of a kind of adventure. Each one brings something different. So before we begin, are there any questions or comments or anything anyone wants to share? You all look like you're kind
Okay.
of
What was the name of the person you just recommended? David?
Richo,
Oh,
Richo.
David Richard.
Richo. Let me put it in the chat, and then that avoids confusion. Um, David Richo.
Thanks very much.
He's written a book called Being True to Life, which is about
Oh,
uh, interacting with poetry for personal development.
thank you.
You're welcome, Margaret. Okay, so maybe we could start with a little stretch, just waking the body up before we sit back into stillness. And feel free if you want to get up and sort of jump up and down or give yourself a massage, whatever it is that feels good. And the first poem um, invites us to lie down on our belly. So ideally, this would be outdoors on the grass, but that's not where we are for most of us anyway. So if you want to lie down on your belly and that's comfortable for you, you might like to do that for this first poem. And if not, I'm sure the poem will still be able to evoke a feeling of doing that just by our imagination engaging with it. Okay, so I'm going to begin to guide us in practice, and then I'll read a poem, and then I'll invite those who are lying down to sit back up, and we'll continue to practice. And I'll read another 3 poems after that with little spaces in between and opportunities after some of them, or maybe all of them, to put your responses in the chat if you wish to. And then at the end, there'll be a chance for some breakout rooms to reflect. And then we'll come back together to gather experiences right at the end of the session, which is at 12:30, I think. Better check that. Okay, so let's begin. So let's come back into our body, whatever position we've chosen to be in. Maybe we can reconnect where we left off with the whole body breathing. So maybe seeing what it might be like to come into beginner's mind in relation to our breath. What is the real experience of this process that we refer to as breath? If we don't decide we already know what it is. Open our attention to experience the whole field of awareness that is our body. Maybe with this quality of not knowing, as if we're venturing into forest. Our senses and our instincts fully awake and aware. Just noticing whatever we notice about what's here. Letting go of images and ideas and maps in favor of direct experience. Going to offer our first poem here. So maybe you can remember what I said about receiving the poem, just letting the poem arrive into how you are as you lie or sit and be there in the body, awake, experiencing what the body does in response to the poem. So the poem is called Lie Down, and it's by Nancy Paddock. Lie down with your belly to the ground, like an old dog in the sun. Smell the greenness of the clover leaf. Feel the damp earth through your clothes. Let an ant wander the uncharted territory of your skin. Lie down with your belly to the ground, melt into the earth's contours like a harmless snake. All else is mere bravado. Let your fists open into useless tendrils. Let your mind resolve itself in a tangle of grass. Lie down with your belly to the ground, flat out on ground level. Prostrate yourself before the soil you will someday enter. Stop doing. Stop judging, fearing, trying. This is not dying, but the way to live in a world of change and gravity. Let go. Let your burdens drop. Let your grief charge bleed off into the ground. Lie down with your belly to the ground and then rise up with the earth still in you. Remembering that you don't have to figure the poem out, just let it have the effect it had. Notice what that is. Letting the mind rest in the after effect of the poem. And those who are lying down, I would like to invite you to come back into sitting, and to do so really gradually and slowly, seeing if you can hold the thread of your embodied presence as you move. Noticing how it might feel different to sit upright compared to lying flat on your belly. Settling into the upright body if you've just moved. See if you can reconnect with the groundedness in this different posture. Noticing what's happening in the mind, if perhaps you've been carried away on a current of thinking, of reaching for something, and maybe reeling that back in the kindest and lightest of ways, back to the freshness of the experience of this body now, sitting here. In its wholeness. Feeling the weight of the body, feeling the breathing happening, experiencing the movements of feeling and sensation. So if your experience in your body this morning is not easy or is a struggle for some reason, that's really going to be part of your experience at the moment. Perhaps just for the practice, we can do our best to release picking and choosing what's here, since it is already here anyway, embracing it. As if we could open our heart to embrace our body. So even when there's unpleasant, or what we would call unpleasant experience going on in our body, there's still a possibility of pleasure alongside it. Sometimes, anyway, when we release resistance. So as part of letting go of our map, we can let go of ideas of what is good and what is bad experience at the moment. Just letting our curiosity receive what's actually here without picking and choosing. So I want to share a second poem here. This one is called Don't Go Outside, and it's by Kabir. And once again, just resting there in your embodied presence to receive this, seeing what the response is that naturally comes from inside you. Don't go outside your house to see the flowers. My friend, don't bother with that excursion. Inside your body, there are flowers. One flower has 1,000 petals. That will do as a place to sit. Sitting there, you will have a glimpse of beauty inside the body and out of it. Before gardens and after gardens. So noticing what shows up for you when you hear this poem. And if you feel in any way resistant to it or unsure about it, just noticing that too. And I want to pick up on one metaphor from the poem, letting ourselves sit in the flower with 1,000 petals that we might find in our body. Let's imagine that we can do that. So here I'll give you just a couple of minutes to respond to both of the first two poems in the chat if you wish to. And if you prefer to just sit, or if you want to draw something or write a little poem yourself, whatever you'd like to do. And there's 2 minutes to do that in here before we go on to the other ones.
Fair. Will we have a copy or the text of the poems?
Yes, I'm going to do my best to give you some links for that.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Just a few moments before we continue. And I'll just say, while you're in breakout rooms, I'm going to collect the references for the poems to put into the chat. And I know when you hear poems in this way and they affect you, you really want to read them again. Some people do anyway. So just know that a poem can be a kind of journey unto itself, and this might be your first hearing. And yeah, I understand the wish to hear it again, but let the experience that you have be what you take from this hearing, and you will definitely be able to access these and continue with them. Okay, so let's come back into a posture for sitting with the next two. And arriving back into our forest of the body, ready to explore, to take in what we find, to experience really being awake within our body, feeling the weight of our body grounding onto the earth and the vast earth beneath us, which is our body's home. So here we have our third poem, and it's called A Song with No End by Charles Bukowski. When Whitman wrote, "I sing the body electric," I know what he meant. When Whitman wrote, "I sing the body electric," I know what he meant. I know what he wanted. To be completely alive every moment in spite of the inevitable. We can't cheat death, but we can make it work so hard that when it does take us, it will have known a victory just as perfect as ours. Again, just experiencing what this poem gave to you. Did it create any disturbance? Or did it bring a feeling or an image or an insight? Did it leave you with questions? Coming back to sitting and just experiencing whatever still remains here from receiving the poem, allowing our mind and our heart to rest here. And our final poem is coming now, and it's called Contemplation on No Coming and No Going by Thich Nhat Hanh. This body is not me. I am not limited by this body. I am life without boundaries. I have never been born and I have never died. Look at the ocean and the sky filled with stars, manifestations from my wondrous true mind. Since before time I have been free, birth and death are only doors through which we pass, sacred thresholds on our journey. Birth and death are a game of hide and seek. So, laugh with me, hold my hand. Let us say goodbye to meet again soon. We meet today. We will meet again tomorrow. We will meet at the source every moment. We meet each other in all forms of life. Again, just experiencing what flavors of aliveness show up with this poem. What movements occur, what sensations show up. Does the poem give a gift? Noticing any movement towards sense making. And although that can be really helpful, you're just releasing it for now and seeing what's actually here. The wisdom inside you, it often speaks in response to the wisdom of a poem, in recognition, and not always in the way we expect. So just a minute or two now to respond in the chat or in whatever way feels good to you, and then we'll go into breakout rooms. I'll put all poems into the chat box while you're in breakout rooms. It was contemplation on no coming and no going. I take that home. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms now. And yeah, just finishing off what you're doing there. And if you want to go into a room, you're very welcome to. If you prefer not to, that's fine. We don't have a huge amount of time left, but I think we'll probably have about 7 minutes in the breakout rooms. So maybe you'll find that you have a need to kind of either choose one or two of the poems to speak about rather than try and talk about them all. But just see how you go. You've got 7 minutes or so. And if you could share your experience of what came to you from listening to the poems. Okay, enjoy.